spotlight is on women in politics. They may make up more than half of the population, but women still occupy less than 20% of the congressional seats, and there are only 5 female governors. So why haven't we made greater strides? Who better to express the challenges of being a female politician than Julia Louis-Dreyfus, a.k.a. Vice President Selina Meyer, in the HBO series Veep. Take a look.
I can't identify myself as a woman. People can't know that. Men hate that. And women who hate women hate that, which I believe is most women. Don't you agree with that?
Yes,
Amy?
and ma'am, we should really bag this up and take it back to D.C.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Right.
So 2 women who fully understand that dilemma are Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a Democrat of Florida, and Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee's 7th District. Meanwhile, Susan Carroll is a professor from the Center for American Women and Politics. Please welcome all of these great ladies. So thank you all so much for being here. It's so fun for me to talk about this. And Debbie, I want to start with you. We heard the numbers. Why do you think there are so few women in politics? Because we've made so many strides in other areas.
Well, we've made strides in politics too, but we, as the saying goes, have a long way to go. I think for the same reasons that we've always struggled. Women are socialized really not to self-recruit. They often wait to be asked. The women that I've talked to, and Marsha and I both are involved in recruiting women to run for office with both of our parties. Women often wait till everything's perfect, especially moms. They have to be able to figure out every single aspect of their lives before they decide to run. And then, you know, they often, sadly, don't think they're qualified. We've made progress, and we've got younger women who've been elected to Congress, Tulsi Gabbard and Kirsten Sinema, who are, you know, both in their 30s, which is fantastic. And, you know, we just got to keep making a concerted effort.
And in fact, Marsha, I know that you believe things are getting better as well. Tell us from your vantage point why you see that.
I do think they're getting better because I think people are more open-minded. You have more women in the workplace. 53% of the workforce is women right now. And individuals are becoming accustomed to having a female employer. But, you know, just as it is improving, it's also a little bit different than when Debbie and I first started into the political process, and social media has kind of changed that game. And just as the Veep in the clip was saying, sometimes people can be very harsh in those clips. You can have rape threats, death threats, all sorts of things that you're having to deal with on Facebook and Twitter.
Meanwhile, Susan, this is something I know you've been studying for many years. You've helped write multiple books on the topic, like More Women Can Run. So why do you think, what have you found about women being less inclined to enter this field?
What we found in our research is that about twice as many men as women say that are what we call self-starters. They say that they decided largely on their own to run for office, whereas women are about twice as likely to say they didn't even consider the idea until someone else suggested it to them. So it's very important that that they be encouraged.
And don't you think as the numbers increase, you know, there's an expression, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And as more and more women enter the ranks, it gives us role models we can look to, because when there are very few of those, it's hard to look in the mirror and see the next governor of your state, right?
That's absolutely the case. And, you know, and I think there are still a lot of districts in this country, even states in this country, that have not elected women to Congress, for example.
Yeah, Iowa and Mississippi both.
Yeah, very few. There's states that still haven't had women as governors. But I think as more women enter these positions, we will see more women coming forward, absolutely.
And Debbie, I know you always wanted to have a career in politics, but you didn't think you'd start so young. Tell us how you got into politics.
I thought that I would take the path that my predecessors had, which was, you know, after you got married, I would have children when they were a little bit older and more independent. Then I would have an opportunity to run. But when I was 25 years old, my boss, I was a legislative assistant, called me at home in the middle of the legislative session and said, you know what, Debbie, I'll get someone else to run my congressional campaign, which is what I was planning to do. You should run now. There's no time like the present.
So you were 26?
I was 26 when I was elected. I was the youngest woman ever elected in Florida.
Wow. And you have no turning back. And Marsha, Marsha, what about you? How did you get into this crazy business?
You know, I was a community volunteer and was the one who would run campaigns and chair the county party and do all of those activities on the backside, very involved. And I needed someone to run for an office, trying to recruit a candidate, and the people on the other side of the table said, "You're it, and you're going to be the one to run." No female had ever run in my state Senate district and won. I was the first. And when I was elected to Congress in 2002 from Tennessee, I was the first woman to ever put her name, do this all on her own from scratch, not come behind a husband or a father, and go on and win that seat and then hold that seat.
And Susan, I think a lot of people follow Marsha's path because my sister was a state senator and she was running for lieutenant governor and then was diagnosed, unfortunately, sadly, with pancreatic cancer, so she had to drop out.
Your sister was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. But she was, you know, very active on the school board and very active in the community, and she used that kind of to hone her leadership skills and then to jump into politics. Meanwhile, once women do get involved, Susan, do they lead differently than men?
Actually, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that they do have a different leadership style. And this is not to say every single woman has a different leadership style, but many of them have a more consensual style. They strive for consensus. They try to work across party lines often. They're more used to, they actually interact with each other. Women in the U.S. Senate are a good example of that.
A Republican and a Democrat actually talking to each other. I mean, alert the media.
And they don't agree politically on much of anything, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things you don't agree on.
No, but Debbie and I, we're one another's worthy sparring partners. And actually, I'm her Tennessee Jewish mother. Care of her.
But it's so important to have personal relationships. I think that's one of the reasons there's so much paralysis on Capitol Hill, because people spend so much time in their districts, not time actually socializing and getting to know each other as people with many of the same hopes and dreams for this country. And I think they would find there's much more that brings them together than tears them apart.
Yeah.
She knows my kids. We've talked about, you know, each other's lifestyles and even the challenges that we've faced. And even though we don't agree on a lot, we root for each other.
Well, amen to that. And up next, the Congresswomen answer our questions and actually questions that viewers have and some people in our audience as well. That's right after this. Women who have traveled up from Capitol Hill to our studio, Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They have been talking about how to get more women involved in politics, and our viewers have a lot of questions about that. So our first question is from Ariana, not Huffington, via Twitter, and she tweets, "What's the best way to get a foot in the door in politics?" Marsha?
Oh, come in and volunteer for a campaign, sign up for an internship in one of the congressional offices, and be a part of the environment so that you can experience it firsthand. Go work on a local issue. Go to your county school board or county commission or city commission and say, "I want to serve on a board or commission." That's the best way to get that experience.
All right, the next question is from Facebook. Cass asks, this is a good question, how do you balance taking care of the needs of your children and the needs of your constituents?
It's the toughest, for me, it's the toughest part of the job. You know, leaving my kids every week back and forth to Washington is really challenging. Today's their my twins' 15th birthday, so I am blowing
Happy birthday, twins. Yeah.
Second day, happy birthday. But being very organized and making sure that you surround yourself with a strong support system. My parents live in the same hometown. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law live in the next town. And not being afraid to ask for help.
Now, your husband, does he take care?
My husband is we call him Saint Steve. There's no way that I could do it without him. Yeah. He totally believes in equal parenting. And, you know, without my support system, but often women think, unless they're doing it all by themselves, then they're failing.
And I think, as Sheryl Sandberg says, I mean, who you have as a partner is just vitally important, because you do need someone who shares the work.
No
okay, now we have a number of students studying political science from New York area universities in our audience today, which is so great. Thank you guys for coming. And they have some questions as well. First, Maya is from CUNY at Brooklyn College. Maya Williams. Hi, Maya. What's your question?
The question is for Representative Westerman Schultz. I just wanted to know, what obstacles did you face, like, in your journey as a female?
Well, I actually faced more obstacles early on being young rather than being a woman. Because, you know, most of the people who I served with all the way through my career have been old enough to be either my parents and sometimes my grandparents. But my biggest obstacle, honestly, was I gave birth to our third child in the middle of my first campaign for Congress. And my opponent at the time spent the whole campaign saying, you can be a good mom or a good member of Congress, but you can't be both at the same time. Well, thankfully, that's what our constituents thought, and so they elected me. But I did have to answer questions that a man never has to answer, including from our editorial page editor, who, when he asked me, well, how are you going to do it, in my editorial board interview, I said, well, I'd be happy to answer that question if you can honestly tell me that you would ask a man with young children who was running for Congress that same question, and when the... I wouldn't ask a man that question. He moved on.
The next question is from Maggie Arroyo from the New School of Social Research. Hi, Maggie.
Representative Blackburn, why do you think certain people are threatened by effective female politicians?
I think that there are people who are affected, are threatened, feel threatened by effective female politicians. And it's because so many times when it comes to conservatives, their tendency is to go to the next person in line. And what we find is for women who have a more circuitous route throughout their careers, with having children, working, maybe taking time off, then moving into public policy, they want to move forward on merit because they know that they're the best and most well-qualified person for the job.
And our final question is from Mary Jane Ajoda, and she's from NYU. Hi, Mary Jane.
Hi, thank you both for all that you do. This question is for Representative Wasserman Schultz. Do you think a Clinton presidency would have a meaningful impact on female participation at the state or local levels of government?
Oh, there's no question that electing a woman president, and let me just give a caveat that since I'm the chair of the Democratic National Committee, if we have a primary, I have to effectively neutrally manage our primary, so just wanted to make sure I gave you that caveat. But electing a woman president, and quite frankly, whether it's a Republican woman president or a Democratic woman president, would set an incredible example and really finally show young girls from every stage of life that a little girl really can. Look, my parents taught me that a little girl really can grow up in America and be anything she wants to be, even president of the United States, and I think that's going to happen.
And finally, Marcia, before we go, I know you're working on the National Women's History Museum.
Yes, I am.
Marcia's, I guess, spearheading that or very involved?
A sponsor of the legislation that would allow the commission to study the creation of a Women's History Museum. And Carolyn Maloney, who is a congresswoman from here in New York.
She's my congresswoman.
Right. Yeah. And she and I have been working on this for a couple of years. It passed out of the House with 383 bipartisan votes, and we were thrilled.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, that, I think, will also help fuel and inspire a lot of young women all over the country to get more involved and follow in your footsteps. Marcia Blackburn, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, thank you so much for coming by and talking with us about this really important topic. Thank you. We'll be right back.